1929, Corpus Christi, Texas. Times are turbulent for men, women, and children of Mexican ancestry. They face violence, hatred, and discrimination at every turn. A small group of men gather secretly to decide how to defend themselves against the attacks. Alone, no one is safe. Together, they hope to be a shield, a voice, and in time, have the power to be heard and respected. Lulac is born. In the 94 years since then, Lulac has spread across America and reached Puerto Rico. Lulac has touched millions of lives across generations, nationalities, and backgrounds. Lulac is now the most visible Latino civil rights organization with an army of volunteers in communities, cities, and states. Lulac is fighting for education, immigration reform, voting rights, access to health care, veterans, including those who are deported, military service members, women, seniors, LGBTQ, and dreamers. The fight for right continues because the wrongs committed against those who cannot defend themselves will happen generation after generation. Until then, Lulac will be on watch, in action, and always at the vanguard. Lulac will lead the fight for right as long as it takes, until the promise of America is fulfilled for all.
Hi, I'm Domingo Garcia, National President Lulac. I just left the Vice President's home here in D.C. And if you can believe it or not, Governor Abbott of Texas dumped 2 busloads of immigrants. And when I say dump, literally dropped them off in front of her house with just the clothes on their back and a black trash bag. Children, mothers, and the fact that the governor of Florida has now sent refugees to Martha's Vineyard, an island off the coast of Massachusetts, also with nothing. And tomorrow I am heading to Martha's Vineyard to see what we can do to help those refugees in Martha's Vineyard stop using human beings as political pawns. Let's find a bipartisan, Republican and Democratic way to fix our broken immigration system. And let's show the world that that Statue of Liberty stands for something. It stands for us as Americans, and it stands for hope for billions of people across the country. These are human beings, and they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. And we're going to go visit them after this is over. And we're also announcing a Bus the Buses campaign that Lulac will be launching, where we will be going to Eagle Pass, Texas, and Del Rio, Texas.
Lulac says they've set up donations to go directly to the victims' families in Uvalde in hopes to help.
I am on my way to Uvalde, Texas, to visit the families of the victims of that terrible tragedy. The good news, we raised $443,000 from Lulac donors and givers. And we're going to give every penny back to the families and the victims so they can get their lives together and that we can make a difference. But it are you, the Lulacers, who gave $5, $20, $100 to that fund to help those families in need, that make the difference there. My family is, right here from this area. Most of my dad's family is from Eagle Pass, Del Rio, and I have cousins here in Uvalde. So I'm here and to be here and let you know that you are not alone. I see that Uvalde is strong. As your national president, the oath you're about to take will impose a grave obligation and responsibility on your shoulders.
Viva Uvalde!
The farm workers are essential workers, and they deserve the dignity, the respect, and the living wage that every American has in this country. We won 2 big victories, striking down Senate Bill 1111 in Texas. That was a voter suppression bill, and that was in our favor by a federal court. Having the state of Texas show why they purged 98,000 predominantly naturalized Mexican-American citizens from the rolls and how they did it. We won a federal court ruling giving that victory also to us. Also, Lulac has been strong in passing legislation. The Nebraska Guillen Act became the law to protect our men and women in the armed forces. the Cassandra Act, also to represent the mental health of our men and women in the armed forces. We continue to work with law enforcement and the military to represent what's best as we serve our country in uniform, as well as in our civilian duties. A woman was scheduled to be executed, the first Latina in Texas in several years, Melissa Lucio, in a case that brought national attention where 5 of the jurors said, you know what, she shouldn't have gotten the death penalty. Lulac stepped in, and I'm proud to say this week, a stay of execution was granted by the Court of Appeals. Lulac is making that difference in the lives of individuals, and that's what we're doing, and we have done. Lulac has raised our ability to be recognized as the #1 Latino organization in America. You should be proud to be a member. We've increased what we've done. The other bills that we have passed regarding COVID, providing help to small mom and pop businesses as they suffered during the COVID pandemic and coming out of it. Vaccinations and programs and supporting our meatpacking plant workers who are essential workers, and we helped to save thousands of lives by what Lulac did to make sure they protected those workers in those factories and meatpacking plants. And I just want to let this message go forth. Lulac has never been for sale, and it's not for sale today. Nobody can buy Lulac. Lulac belongs to the members and it belongs to the community. And I'm going to make sure as your national president that that's the way it stays, that we stay independent, nonpartisan, and we stand for every Jose and Maria.
In schools like this one is struck the first spark which, with proper care, will grow into the desire of accomplishment that guarantees a strong and free nation. But in this school, as in many others, the door of opportunity to learn doesn't always swing open for every student. A problem exists. Stated simply, not all first grade students speak English. Yes, in our country, the United States.
It's no secret that English is a weird language, weirder than most. In the 1950s, Mexican students who were starting elementary school were struggling with their grades because they didn't know how to speak English. In 1957, Isabel Verver and Felix Tijerina founded the Little School of 400. Its goal was to teach Spanish-speaking children 400 words in English to help them successfully pass the first grade. Verver, a teenager who wanted to help out her community, taught the class. The school was held during the summer of 1957 in Ganado, Texas, and taught 60 kids. The program was so successful that the next year, Lulac, the League of United Latin American Citizens, held similar classes in other towns like Edna and Aldine. These programs were privately funded, but Verver and Tijerina, along with the other members of Lulac, worked to pass a bill during the 56th Texas legislation. House Bill 51 introduced a state-sponsored program called the Preschool Instructional Classes for Non-English Speaking Children. This program was later replaced with others, such as Project Head Start. Project Head Start started when President Lyndon B. Johnson caught sight of the success of Lulac's programs and decided to spread this across the country as part of his war on poverty. Of course, it's no secret that English is a weird language. But thankfully, with all the work from Lulac, the technology and programs we have today, non-English speaking students have many more resources to help them learn this confusing language. Felix Tijerina was the 20th president of Lulac, also known as the League of United Latin American Citizens, and the founder of the Little School of 400. Felix was born in 1905 to farm workers. When he was 9, his dad died, leaving him to look after his mother and 3 sisters. When he was 13, he moved to Houston and got a job as a busboy. In 1933, he married Juanita Gonzalez. Felix then became the founder of the Latin American Club of Harris County, which worked to educate Mexican Americans on their political rights. In 1956, Felix became the president of Lulac, and it merged with the LAC. He began to notice that a lot of Latin American students were failing the first grade because they didn't know English. Felix decided to start a school to teach them the English language, which was dubbed the Little School of 400. Isabel Verver, a high school student, read about Felix in a magazine and asked if she could teach the class. In 1957, Isabel Verver became the official teacher of the Little School of 400. Because it was so successful, Felix and Lulac made more little schools in different towns. These classes were taught by local Latin American women. The grades of the students who took the class changed drastically, and they had a greater success rate than the students who didn't. Eventually, the school closed in the mid-1960s due to Project Head Start. Project Head Start was inspired by the Little School of 400 and more widespread. In 1965, Felix unfortunately died of heart disease. Even though he died, he was remembered through the Tijerina Elementary School and the Tijerina Foundation Scholarship, which is a program that helps students go to school. In the 1940s, a little Latina first grader who lived in Ganado, Texas, needed to go to the restroom. There was one problem. She couldn't speak English, and her teacher couldn't understand her. The teacher put her hand on the girl's shoulder and told her to sit down. The girl listened to her instructions and had an accident. Fueled by embarrassment and determination, this was the day that Isabel Valverde de la Vega promised to herself that she would learn how to speak English. Years later, as a teenager, she read about Felix Tijerina, the president of the League of Latin American Citizens, and the great things that Lulac was accomplishing. 14-year-old Isabel was inspired by them and wanted to help him teach kids basic English words at Ganado Elementary School during the summer. Soon after, Isabel got in contact with Tijerina and they met up at her house. Tijerina was thrilled with Isabel's volunteering and said that he would help her out with anything she needed. Isabel was able to meet up with a professor to discuss the development of the 400. Isabel then obtained the school's principal's approval of the idea. When she started, she had only 5 students, even after knocking on so many doors. Isabel felt discouraged, but by showing parents what their kids could learn, she was able to get a full classroom. At the time, Isabel was too young to understand how much a difference she had made. She taught until her father's crops were destroyed by a hurricane, which was when she had to stop teaching and start working for him. Even though she no longer worked with the children, the impact she had on America can never be erased.
Let's talk about history a moment. Lulac was organized here in my hometown, Corpus Christi, Texas. It's a source of great personal pride and pride for the Hispanic community. Mexican Americans in the 20s were largely a outcast group of Americans. Keep in mind that in the 20s, we were not too distant from the historic Mexican Revolution. And many of the persons who organized the revolution to bring democracy to Mexico actually met in cities like San Antonio, Laredo, in the Valley, and ultimately perhaps a remnant in Corpus Christi. And I mention that because Corpus Christi is so close to the border that the genesis for democratic ideals really had its origins in Corpus Christi in South Texas. So Lulac had a mix of Americans who were born in America, but also Mexican nationals who became naturalized citizens and chose to adopt the democracy that was fought for and many people died for in Mexico. And therefore, in the 20s, the Sons of America joined with other organizations, the League of American Citizens, and formed the League of United Latin American Citizens, with the founding council being Council 1 in Corpus Christi at Obreros Hall. A historical marker still sits across from the Nueces County Courthouse where Obreros Hall originally stood. Unfortunately, over time, because the Mexican-American history has always been forgotten, Hispanic history in America has always been neglected, so that building was razed. It was destroyed. It was demolished. There was no historic significance in our city fathers, and therefore it was not preserved, unfortunately. But the marker is there where the building once stood. San Antonio became council number 2, and there are the origins of Lulac, which is now a very proud, magnificent organization that encompasses Latinos or Hispanics from all persuasions, of all ethnicities, of all origins, of all philosophies. It's not a homogeneous group of, say, Democrats or Republicans or Independents. It's a mosaic of different nationalities and cultures that makes us formidable, in my opinion, as a political, social, and economic entity. But it had its origins right here in Corpus Christi, Texas. I had the honor, the distinct pleasure of serving as Lulac National President and State Director, and before that, Deputy State Director in Texas, beginning in the 70s. And then my tenure as Lulac National President was from 79 to 81. At that time, we were bound by the Constitution to serve only 2 terms 2 successive one-year terms, or 2 terms in total, which is what I served, and I was followed by my brother Tony Bonilla, who served from 81 to 83. My brother William Bonilla served in 1964, and he has this historic photo of meeting with Lyndon Johnson in the White House, which was the first time that a LULAC national president had met with the United States President of the United States. That's sort of common now for our national presidents to have that privilege of meeting with the president and members of his cabinet to discuss issues important to our community. I'm proud to say that my brother William sort of laid the foundation and established a precedent for that to occur. There's been many historical movements by LULAC, and I think that others are in a better, perhaps more knowledgeable position to expound upon those. One of the questions that I was asked earlier was, is LULAC relevant today? What is its landscape for the future? And what are the opportunities, but also what are the challenges? On Friday, February 17, 2023, it appears we'll be celebrating the 94th anniversary of LULAC's founding on February 17th, 1929, in Corpus Christi, Texas. Our first president, Ben Garza Sr., is entombed at the Rose Hill Cemetery, and annually it has been a solemn occasion where we pay tribute to his life and to the other founders who nobly came together to establish this concept of a League of United Latin American Citizens. The irony is that it was primarily a Mexican-American organization. So if you think about that, they could have called it League of Mexican-American Citizens, but for one reason or another, they had this uncanny view, almost if they could look ahead 100 years, soon to be, and say, we need to encompass all men and women, all voices, all creeds, all cultures. So we'll call it League of United Latin American Citizens. So those of a Latin heritage, Hispanic heritage, whether we're Mexican American, Puerto Rican, Venezuelan, Cuban American, that we speak as one voice when possible. I know that there are differences in opinion between regions and geographies, but basically we all want to appreciate the application of the Constitution. That's why the LULAC Constitution that was worked on by men like Alonso Perales and Eddie Dad and so many others represent the best of America. So here we are, 94 years, only 6 years from the 100th anniversary. So we need to work very hard, work daily to assure that when we reach 100 years of age, we will be as youthful and as vibrant as the men and women were on February 17, 1929.